The first step in preparing our sample project is to stay stitch the bodice front and bodice back neck edges. Stay stitching is a line of machine stitching, regular machine stitching, directional machine stitching, to prevent the seam lines from stretching out of shape. It is done 1/4 of an inch from the bodice front and the bodice back neck edge. And you can see there the directions with the 2 arrows. Before I take my pattern paper off my patterns, what I want to do is make sure I mark, and I do that by pin marking, and I use a pin through the mark, through the dot, and then I take my marking pen and make a mark there. That way I'll know where my markings have to start and stop. The reason that we stay stitch is because the neck edges are cut on a bias, which, remember, stretch, and we don't want them to stretch out of shape. We will be putting facing and a collar on those edges. So to do this, it's 1/4 of an inch, regular machine stitching, no back stitching necessary, and this stitching will stay right along here, and I'm going to start at the shoulder edge and go to the center back seam. I will trim my threads every time. So I did that side. And you always want to start at the shoulder seam. Needle in, and just 1/4 of an inch. This prevents it from stretching. One of my threads is caught here. And that one is sewed. When you do the bodice front, and I have all my marks there, you don't do it in one step. It's 2 steps. You sew from each shoulder seam to the center. So we'll start here. And we will go to the center front. And then we'll turn it over, and we'll go from the other shoulder seam to the center front. This prevents your neck edge from stretching as you add a collar and facings to this edge, and you're working on that. Trim all your threads. This line of stitching doesn't have to be removed. It's within the seam allowance. So that end's done too. When you're finished, you can see the directional stitches there. The arrows show you which way you sewed. You start at the shoulder seams and sew to the center and trim your threads. On your bodice back, you sew to the center. Next, we'll get ready for our zipper.